Welcome back.
Welcome to Decision Space, the only show to take place right here in the space between the turns in your favorite games. I'm Brendan Hansen.
I'm Jake Friedman.
This is the podcast about decisions in games.
And today we're going to be recapping my experience at Geekway Mini, where I played 19 games with the laughing table friends and other friends from the Decision Space community.
In this episode of Decision Space, we're covering 19 games.
We're covering 19 games, but not in a deep dive format, our very different rapid fire format.
Mini reviews.
So it's so funny because you recently shared with me that older episode of Ludology. I think it was like episode 78, where Jeff Engelstein was talking about the difference between reviews and board game criticism. And he says that nobody or very few people are really doing criticism. And we were kind of thinking, wow, that's actually kind of what we do on this show is board game criticism. And today we're doing reviews.
Yeah, that's today, only reviews. Here we go. We might be known for criticism. Today is all reviews. Yep. But Jake, we have a special announcement. Also, 19 games. What a madman. This weekend, I can't wait to delve into it. We should preview some of them. We're going to cover games. There's a Knizia game. We're going to cover a classic Euro that people can't stop talking about.
The craziest play of Dune.
Spoilers, designed by one of my favorite designers of all time. Jake doesn't even know who I'm talking about. We're going to cover a dice game that people love from 2010. We're going to cover a game we've previously covered on the podcast that we adore. Wait, hold that. 2 of those? What could they be? And so much more. But before we get into it, Jake, what's the Decision Space Jam?
Dude, welcome to the jam. Dun, dun. Space Jam. So we're doing a design jam where we're inviting all of our listeners, everyone in the Decision Space community, to put on their game design hats and participate in the first ever Decision Space design in parentheses jam. Brendan, how's this going to work?
So we've partnered with Aurora, who was on our episode where we deep dive Barrage. And this is a roll and write design jam in which the rules are laid out completely on decisionspacepodcast.com/decisionspace-jam. But essentially, everyone's going to have 6 weeks to put together a roll and write game in which, and the constraints are fairly tight. You have your input randomness is going to be 2d6, 2 6-sided dice rolled every round. It's going to be a set number of turns per game, and everyone's going to be able to submit a design and then get feedback on their design. If you submit your own design and give feedback to other players by playing their games and giving their thoughts, you're guaranteed at least 3 inputs of feedback on your own, plus more, because Jake, Aurora, and I are going to be giving feedback on everyone's game.
Yeah, I think it's like if 4 people submit designs, then you're guaranteed to get feedback from like at least 6 people.
There was just a lot of feedback. That's amazing.
And we are probably potentially going to really regret this, but you'll definitely get feedback from Brendan and I and Aurora, which is sort of the judging team for this contest.
And we're going to talk about so basically the loop here, right, is listeners of the show design a roll and write based on the constraints laid out on decisionspacepodcast.com/decision-space-jam, JAM, like the, delicious fruity treat. But
or
in
like
this case,
the Michael Jordan movie.
Or like the Michael Jordan movie, the pun we're making. And then we're going to cover the winners/notable games in a future episode of the show. We'll have Aurora on. We'll talk through a lot of the submissions, talk about interesting decision spaces that came out of this relatively narrow decision space offered by our constraints, which I think is exciting. Jake, constraints breed creativity is the common design saying. So I think we'll see cool stuff. I encourage all of our listeners to push themselves to do interesting things and novel things within the restraints laid out.
I think just push yourself to try. My thinking is that like the vast majority of listeners of the show have not really put pen to paper to put together a design of their own that is playable. And I think this is a great opportunity to do that in one of the simplest ways possible. There's no pressure. There's not really any prizes. The whole impetus here is just to
Design
get
games.
together, practice designing, and try and build up a little bit more of the decision space design community. So we'll have our Discord channels. A Discord channel will be dedicated just to this. We'll encourage people, if you want to participate, to create a work in progress thread for your design where you can brainstorm, get feedback from other people, and then hopefully play test each other's games too. I'm participating. Brendan, I think, is planning to. It should be a really, really fun time. And, if you've ever thought about designing a game, I found that just like the more I've practiced doing it, it's like a muscle that you flex and get better at. And this is just a great opportunity to do that with friends in a fun way. So the only prize is just to I think we're going to declare a winner or a couple of winners. It's not like a cash prize we'll talk about in the pod, but really the reward is just
You made a game.
You made a game. Yeah.
And again, you can find out more at decisionspacepodcast.com/decisionspacejam. That's JAM. And we'll talk about this in future episodes of the show as well.
And it's open now, and we're going for through the end of February, right? So it's pretty
6
short
weeks.
time frame. Yeah.
So start now.
Yeah.
And if you have questions, ask us in the Discord, which you can find a link to in our show notes or on decisionspacepodcast.com. Okay, Jake, you covered 19 games this week. We don't have time to talk about this contest that's so exciting and so cool. We got to talk about the games.
Games.
Review.
Okay, really, really quick. We got another review, which we always love to read. Thank you so much to M. Huey for leaving this review on Apple Podcasts titled 150 exclamation point. Wow. 150 episodes. I'm a podcast hoarder, always collecting more than I can listen to, but when a Decision Space podcast shows up on my feed, I consume it right away. Thanks for the excellent show, gentlemen. You should be quite proud of what you've built. Thanks for all your hard work. Thank you so much, Huey, for the kindness of leaving us that review. As always, it's truly wind in our sails when we get to see something like that pop up. Okay, games.
Games. Bruxelles. 1897. Games. 19. We got to fly, Jake.
Okay.
Are we starting with Bruxelles? Wait, is this Bruxelles?
We're starting with
Brussels? Brussels?
Yeah, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, 1897. Released in 2019 by Etienne Esperman.
Yeah, so this is a really beautiful worker placement game where you will be playing as, I think, architects building up the city that is the namesake of this game, which Brendan so eloquently stated previously.
Brussels. It's got to be Brussels.
So it is like a classic mid to mid heavy, for my taste, Euro game with 7 different actions, but some really interesting novel mechanisms. So one thing that I really enjoyed about this game is at the top of one side of the board, you kind of have an ever-changing stock market of sorts for paintings. So you'll be collecting different colored paintings. And whenever you sell a painting, you get to push a marker that shows all 5 colored paintings on it in the 4 different corners of a square, on a grid. So if I push it up, the 2 at the top of the square increase in value. So anyway, that's just kind of how that works.
When you sell a certain color, other colors increase in value, not that color?
You get to move it first. So you can increase the value of your painting before selling it, pushing it towards the top, potentially making the other paintings' values worse. And it's kind of like a grid. So on one side, if you push it left, you get victory points. And if you push it up, you might get more money. And then it'll be an inverse for the painting on the opposite corner of the square tile that you're moving around this grid. It's a little bit hard to explain visually, but very simple once you see it on the table. It also has another kind of novel thing where we've got a clock face. So every time you construct a building on the board, and I should probably lead with the main portion of this game is a worker placement board where you'll be putting a worker out onto a space and taking the action indicated, such as sell a painting or take a painting or build a building. And when you build a building, you get to put that building onto a worker placement onto the board so that any subsequent person that takes that action gives you a bonus for taking it. So that's pretty standard worker placement stuff. We've seen things like that before, but it has a cool mechanism where that makes it just a touch more interactive, which is that every time somebody builds a building on a board, it costs whatever the clock hands are pointing to. So it'll be either be pointing at like money or a different colored resource. And then you get to tick one of the hands clockwise to make it more difficult, perhaps, for the person following you to take an action or, get back to a type of resource that you have a lot of. So kind of just
Don't
like
build this building until 11 p.m. We can't afford it yet.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of just like the person right before you building a building and just like eyeing your resource stacks that you only have yellows because you're an idiot and just like, we're just going to move this one away from that. It's like, damn. And then it also has, so that's kind of some of the interesting novel twists on familiar mechanisms. It also has like whenever you take an action, you have to place a bid down with your worker. And then at the end of the round, whoever has the most total money in the column gets like this hugely important benefit that helps you go up end game scoring tracks, standard stuff. But the people who don't win just get nothing, making it just like this incredibly brutal type of auction that you don't see too much these days. So at the end of the day, it felt really familiar mechanism wise, but just as a super solid, I found highly enjoyable puzzle. If you're into sort of mid-weight worker placement, just like Euro game, but with some, real punchy tightness that almost is evocative of an older kind of era of Euro game. The last thing I'll say about it is it really stood out to me, like in playing Brussels, that every single card is just like looks like it had a 30-year-old white guy on it that looks exactly like me. Like I feel very well represented in this game and this hobby. So I mean, I just like put that for comment. It is like an old school feeling Euro game with some interesting twists on mechanism, but it kind of has some of that like, this is like a very beige game that only has dudes in it that look like me.
Gotcha. Would you play it again?
I would play it again. It's the type of game that kind of like, feels like a Castles of Burgundy style game in the sense that like there's a bunch of different actions that like it takes quite a bit of a teach to onboard you onto it, but each of the things is actually really quite simple. So I feel like the next time I played it would be a lot easier to get to the table, just a little bit breezier to play, and then you'd get to interact with the game a little bit more. Also, kind of one of the players sort of ran away with the game with like really exploiting the paintings by just like collecting a ton of paintings and getting all kinds of in-game scoring for paintings. So that was interesting, and I kind of want to just explore a little bit more and see if that is always going to be the case, which I suspect it is not, and to see if like I could find a way to like go exponential in the way that this player did in other avenues of the game.
Interesting. Okay, so that's Brussels 1897.
Yeah, it was a really fun play.
So cool. Okay, Jake, really quickly, given the the stormy start, talking about the review we covered, the Decision Space Jam we covered at decisionspacepodcast.com/Decision Space Jam. I think, and then we jumped into Brussels. We kind of neglected to say where you played these 19 games.
Yeah, we should talk about
where do you play 19 games? Like, why are we covering these?
Yeah, so this weekend was Geekway Mini. So every summer, as you know, since you were here last year, St. Louis has its largest board game convention of the year called Geekway to the West, which I think usually has somewhere around 2,000 to 3,000 people. So which is a big crowd of board gamers, but modest by the standards of some of the biggest conventions out there. And Geekway Mini is offered by the same folks who put Geekway on, but I think they limit capacity at 300 people. So it's just like a much more intimate affair. They still have the same play to win setup, and they still have like the same massive library of games. So every game, more or less, that you could want is just sitting there for you to take and play. But I think for us, it more than anything else is just an excuse to set aside a weekend to play 19 games. And I was playing these games with Luke and Tyler and Jared from the Laughing Table Friends. Sadly, Charlie, our fourth of the five members, couldn't be there because of exciting family things that are happening for him. But we had a fifth, Keenan, who's Jared's friend, fill in with us. We were also playing with William, who is not a local to St. Louis. He is a Discord member. You may know him as Beer for Dad in our Discord. And he drove down from Iowa and he played with us all weekend as well. And he came to Geekway. It was so great to see William and play with him again. And a lot of these games that I'll talk about were ones that he brought out, including this next one called Mini Express. And then Bridget, my wife, came for a few games as well. So that was the crew that I played all these games with.
Okay, this game is designed in 2021 and it was designed or released in 2021, designed by Mark Geratis, who designed Steamrollers, who was a 2015 roll and write, which I know of because a lot of people, it's like the early wave in roll and writes.
Right.
So how was Mini Express? Is it a roll and write?
So Mini Express is a cube rails game.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, maybe the third cube rails game I've played. I played Iberian
Chicago
Gauge
Express?
once. I played Chicago Express with you a
Okay.
ton, and with William as well, in prepping for that episode on it. And this is the third one. And I think just having played it once, and it was probably my very favorite one. So much like other cube rails games, it takes a train game where players will be working kind of collaboratively to build train lines across, in this case, the United States, and at the same time acquiring stocks in various trains to ultimately score points with those stocks at the end of the game. And the hallmark of this genre that I just really love is that it takes a complex game of competing incentives and it distills it down to just a few simple actions. In this case, Brendan, is literally two actions. You could either buy a contract, right? Buy a stock in a company, or build trains. And those two actions are intrinsically linked because whenever somebody buys a contract in a company, it adds 3 trains to the supply for that train. And then when somebody, builds trains, they can use as many of those they want. And then the cost of a contract is just equal to how many trains are in the current supply.
Interesting. That sounds really novel. Jake, as you were saying this, I was just thinking like, wait, that's all I ever do in Chicago Express anyway.
Right. Well, Chicago Express has like a couple of other things.
Develop? Who does that?
It has develop, right? And you can like call a null auction or whatever.
Sure.
So this
Okay.
is less, I guess, interactive in that sense that you're not auctioning trains.
Okay, right. You're just buying them.
You're just like, it's like, oh, the person in front of me just used up all but one of the trains. I guess I'll just take this for one share.
Okay,
And
sure.
I guess it's not really dollars you're spending either. It's like you moving up and down influence tracks. So
Like
to
VP?
buy a share, kind of. So to buy a
Okay.
share, you move down on the influence track of that company, and to score points at the end, you're basically multiplying the number of shares you have with your influence in that company, more or less. I'm kind of simplifying a little bit for the listeners. And I think I'm already making this sound way more complicated than it is because it's just like such a simple, breezy game. And I think it played in an hour, maybe 45 minutes with 5 players, maybe an hour with Teach, and I just had a really good time with it. It is the kind of game where, as a first play, I had a lot of fun, but like the strategy was really opaque, especially at first, where I just had no clue what I should be doing. And then it began to like open up a little bit and a little bit more to where like by the very, like last few turns of the game, I'm like, okay, like that's the kind of thing I should be thinking about playing Mini Express, which would make me super excited to play it again. And so having that learning happen in real time was a really fun, just like a totally pleasurable experience all the way through. Yeah, I think if you're a fan of the cube rails genre, and maybe this is a little bit outside the beaten path since it's not, in that like main tool art series or whatever. I think this one is worth checking out and exploring. It was one of the surprise kind of highlights for me, especially the first day. Mini Express.
That sounds awesome. You sold me. I want to play. I want to play more cube rails, and I feel I've never heard of Mini Express. I'm going to be honest, but the idea that like I know your simplified system is simplified, but it's a cool idea. The fact that you're not dealing with auctions, you can just opt to buy a specific track, and then it's some sort of like multiplier mechanism. It sounds cool.
Yeah, so basically you just buy a track with influence, and then like you get influence by going into a city. Each city grants you influence in 2 different trains.
So the board really matters.
Yeah, and at first I was like, the board doesn't matter at all. By the end of the game, I was like, oh,
The
it turns
board's the
out the board
game.
does matter.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, I
Love
got
it.
really far in my understanding. Yeah, highly recommend people seek this one out. I think people should know about it.
Okay, so Jake, another game in which from my understanding, not that I've ever played it, 2003 release. This is one of the older games you play this weekend. Designed by Claudia Helly and Roman Pellick, is Santiago, released in 2003. This is a game
Yeah.
where the board really matters, right?
Is this one you're familiar with?
I'm familiar with it in as much as the fact that I'm hearing whispers of people being like, "This is an old Euro that's amazing. You would like it."
Right. Yeah. I think lately I've been, I consume just way too many board game podcasts
Sure.
and like other board game media. So it's definitely one I've seen, spoken about on several different podcasts. I think Board Game Barrage and I think Game Brain specifically are places where I've heard kind of praise heaped on this game. But I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me. And yeah, so it's like a bit of like a critic darling, right? Kind of getting a resurgence, people exploring it, which I suspect is the reason why Jared wanted to bring this out. So I think it was everybody's first play of this game. The way it works is that it is pretty much a pure auction game. So you just have a board that's just squares, right? It's just lots that you can put tiles on if you win them in an auction. And the tiles are just different types of fruit. There's like melons, bananas, peppers. I guess peppers are not, strictly speaking, a fruit.
They have seeds. They're fruit.
They are? Okay,
I
great.
think according to like tax law, they're fruit.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Anyway, so you get a tile. A tile. It'll have a fruit, and it'll show either one or two farmers on it. So you put on the board, and then you put that many farmers from your personal supply. Then the next thing that happens is there's like a phase where crops can get irrigated. Basically, somebody gets to add a piece of wood to the board that like is as long as two squares on the board, so it could measure up to, or sorry, it could water up to 4 tiles, right? 2 on either side of it. And the person who gets to decide where that is the person who spent the least in the auction or passed first in the auction. And they're called like the canal overseer. And the way this phase of the game works is pretty hilarious, where each person in turn order gets to make a suggestion to the canal overseer, and you can bribe with that suggestion. So if I put my pepper down with 2 farmers on it, and I really want it to get watered, because the third phase of the game is like anything that isn't watered either loses a farmer, or if there's no farmers on it already, just flips over and it is desolate now. So I want to get my water, so I can say like, oh gee, Tyler, it sure would be great if we put that canal right here. And I can also say, and I would pay $2 to you if you do that. And then everybody goes around. They can make a new suggestion. I suggest this, but I'm not going to pay you anything. You could even say, I suggest the same as Jake, and I'll add $1 to it. And then once it gets all the way back to Tyler, he gets to say, okay, great. Jake, thank you for the $2. I agree. We'll put it there. Perfect. Or he can pick somebody else's suggestion, or he could pick one that is not suggested by anybody, but he has to pay the cost of the highest bribe to the bank if he does that. Like, so there's like a lot of like wheeling and dealing and just fun negotiation, which is something that's rare for me to be saying in that, because it really feels like you're negotiating, but it's also like so constrained that I don't just find it like a little too annoying. And that's pretty much the game loop. Then crops wither and die, and we do another draft for tiles, and I think you do that 9 times. And then all you do for scoring is you look at each group of shared the same type of fruit. So like I have like, here's 4 melons here. I count up how many farmers I have on that on those melon tiles and multiply it. And you do that for like everywhere on the board. And that's pretty much scoring. And I basically just taught you how to play Santiago.
So it's like an old school Euro game mixed with a negotiation game. Jake loves one of those things, and I would say, at best, would pass on the other, negotiation.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I really liked it. I
You
thought it
liked
was
it.
a
Okay.
super clever game. It was quick. Of the designers that I'm familiar with, it really reminded me of like a Knizia game, probably just because the auction is like so
Clean.
so clean, so
Yeah.
central to what's happening in the game. Yeah, super fun game. I think it's it's worth the hype.
So
If
now
you
we're
get a
just a
chance
hype.
to,
We're
yeah,
2003 old school hype podcast.
that's
Look at
right, dude.
us. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I feel really happy recommending this. I think if you're somebody who's like, I like auctions and you haven't
Yeah.
played Santiago, like that's all
Play
enough.
it.
That's enough to get it.
And you
Play it if you get the chance.
said under an hour.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We played
Cool.
with 5 players. Almost all these games we played with 5 players. It probably took right at an hour if I had to guess, but I don't have like actual
That's
numbers
pretty
in front of
good.
me.
5
Yeah.
players at an hour.
And
Okay.
it's all like everybody's first play too.
Okay. Santiago. I want to play it. Let's go.
Yeah, I think you'd dig it.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Okay,
Well, I'm planting my peppers. Okay.
Yeah, after that we played. I had the chance to pick a game. Somebody's like, Jake, you pick a game, and I was like, all right, if you're gonna let me choose, I'm gonna subject you to playing my own little prototype game that I brought, which was fun. So we played that for a few minutes as sort of the next thing up. Nothing really to report on the podcast now, but I am really appreciative of the Laughing Table friends for giving that one a shot with me.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Is this the one that's like vaguely deduction themed?
Yeah, it's definitely not deduction
Themed.
themed. Yeah, but
Okay,
not
yes.
not
Yeah.
mechanics. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be talking about it more soon and sharing more
Okay.
about it soon. I'm sure, but not quite yet.
We'll save it for a later day. Okay.
Yeah.
It's getting hot in here.
Yeah, so not a ton to say about this play of Heat, a game we just covered on episode 148, but it was really fun. I'd played it on the table, months before we recorded that episode, and then all of my plays for the episode were online. So it was so fun to just get it to the table again, sort of after doing all those online plays. And I mean, it's so fun on the table. We added a few modules into it. My opinion on the modules hasn't really changed. I think they're totally fine. They range from like, I don't like them to like, this is a good added, variability.
Sure. The cards that give you modes of choice, those are fine.
The cards are cool, yeah. The thing I still think is kind of like annoying is on the map we played, we do just like random weather events.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say weather. Yeah.
And so like on one half of the board, like literally basically a half of the board is like no slipstreaming. It's like, but that's the game. So like I don't want to not be able to like engage with that on this half of the board.
Oh.
And then there's the other module was like added. It was you just like add it to the corners where it's like this corner is +1 speed to what's printed on the board or -1 speed. And like that's totally fine, right? Because that just adds variety.
Sure.
But it's not, yeah. So
want to play Mario Kart without the drifting?
No. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm still kind of like take it or leave it on the extra modules. I mean, happy to have them in the box, but the game itself is just like a complete blast.
Yeah, rock solid.
Yeah, rock solid game.
Okay, Jake, once upon a time, Repost Productions was brilliant enough to print a party game called Just One, and they followed it up with this incredible party game called So Clover. And then this year, 2 years ago, it's 2 years ago already, they released a game called Fun Facts that was nominated for the Spiel des Jahres. I've never played it, but now you have. What do you think?
Yeah, so I played it quite a lot actually. So this
really?
is one I brought out. Yeah, Fun Facts, Repost Productions. They don't miss with the party games.
Oh, no.
You know?
Okay, great.
Yeah, you got to add this one to your arsenal of party games. It's like the perfect family game or like perfect to play at work. And it kind of worked here too. In that I was playing with people that I was familiar with, but outside of board gaming, really, I don't know everything about the people. So the way this game works is somebody will ask a question. So the question could range, it's just, there's a wild range of questions. It could be like, how much do you sleep a night on average? And then I write my name on one side of a little tiny dry erase placard. And on the other side, I write my answer. And then I'll put whoever asked the question, and they're on cards, puts theirs out first. And it goes around the table and each person has to decide where they should go based on what they know about the other people. So let's say you put yours out and now I'm going next. And I think I probably sleep more a night.
For the listeners. Oh, more. Okay. Interesting.
I was going to say, I would guess I sleep more a night on average than you do.
I bet that's true. I have a toddler.
Because I know that you have a toddler and I don't have a toddler.
Yeah. You have a dog.
Right. And then Maya, it would go next, and Maya would say, okay, do I think I sleep
Less. She reads the
more or
Atlantic at
less
3
thing?
a.m.
You know what I mean? But like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then it goes
No,
around,
I
and you
got
could
you.
also like insert between people. But then the questions could also be like really loopy. Like one we got was just, what if you could time travel to any year? What year would you go to? And you're like trying to guess, like,
Oh, that's awesome.
so like ours
Is
range
there
from like 1623 BC to like BCE to like 3001.
Now I'm trying to figure out what happened in 1623 BCE that someone was like, I want to go back there. Also,
My
aren't there
wife's an archaeologist.
Okay, that checks out, Bridget. Okay, but now aren't there also questions, Jake? That's like, how far can you throw a sock?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of funny stuff. It's like how many people are. I think on the back of the box, like the example is like how many people around the table do you think you could beat in an arm wrestle?
It like invites competition. I love that.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
just like a hilarious, simple party game. You're like trying to do as good as you can, but often, when you're flipping up, it reveals just interesting stuff. I thought one of the funny ones from our game was like how afraid of spiders are you? And I put like 36. So I got to be like close to the bottom. But it turned out like 36 was like, one of the highest, except for Jared, who is like 91 or something. So, it's just funny how the reveal is just exciting, fun moment. So that's fun facts. Totally recommend it to almost anyone as a really fun party game to add to the arsenal.
Officially added to my Game Nerds cart as of right now. Jake, you played Challengers at Geekway Mini.
Yes, that was the next game we played.
It wasn't regular Challengers, was it?
It was not. I got the chance to play Challengers Beach Cup, the follow up to the Kenner Spiel winning Challengers. So, what Beach Cup adds is, I think, 6 new factions, and then it's designed to be mixed in with the old game, which is really exciting because, that just all of a sudden now from a game that was growing a little bit stale to me for the meta after a mere 200 plays or whatever, now is completely fresh once again. So we played with only the new factions, and I think myself and Luke were just kind of giddy with excitement. We're the two that played Challengers the most. Luke by a factor of about 5 times more than I've played Challengers. Yeah. He reached
What?
1,000
1,000
plays. Yeah.
Let's go, Luke. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Okay.
So yeah, we were just kind of like tapping each other on the shoulder, like, did you see this card? Like when there's like a newcomer in the deck that is a 2 power card that then can like go on to your other newcomers. So Luke saw that and he's like, did you see it? Yeah, in pack A, and like that kind of thing. And I was doing the same thing, and I tried to use a strategy that I thought would be like super sick and got absolutely wrecked, as people who had never really played Challengers ever before, or maybe once, ended up, facing off in the championship as it's meant to be. And it was great. It was super fun. It does feel like, I think after just one single play, it feels like it really is hitting the sweet spot of, more exciting and different, right? You kind of want them to like add some like crazy new stuff that's going to be exciting while still feeling like Challengers without really adding too much rules complexity. Some new type of effects, like no flag win. So if this comes out and like it doesn't win the flag, that will trigger something. So it was cool, man. It was a ton of fun. It's exactly what you'd want from a follow-up to Challengers. It's just like more exciting Challenger cards to mix in. And I'm just like praying that it comes to Board Game Arena, because that's really the venue that I have to where I'll be able to explore it the amount that I want.
So basically recommended, but probably start with Challengers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's for people that want more Challengers.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. But that's me. I want to play it.
Right, yeah.
I'm jealous.
Yeah,
okay.
And I want to do the next time I go to Gamers Ranch, I'm going to try and get the Mega
16 player
Epic
game.
Championship using both sets this time.
Yeah, sounds sick. And also, I also want it to come to Board Game Arena so we can play 200 games and then maybe record a podcast about it. At least why not?
Yeah,
200 each.
If it comes to Board Game Arena,
we're doing it.
Basically guarantee a Decision Space podcast about it.
So this next game, 2019, and it's an Italian game designed by Flaminia Brazzini and Virgino Gigli. who is known for games like Grand Austria Hotel, which you love, Lorenzo, which we have not covered on the show, Golem, which we have not covered on the show, and First Rat, which we have not covered on the show, but are some pretty cool games that people like. And Coimbra is like a classic, kind of like a more standard Euro game compared to some of the games we've been talking about. What do you think of it? That's like Jake bread and butter type
It
stuff.
really is my bread and butter. Like, it is a dice drafting
Okay.
slash dice like worker placement game, right? So basically, draft a dice, place it on one of 4 spaces, and then over the course of games, you're going up different tracks and just doing like classic Euro stuff. A lot of the game is oriented around drafting cards. So the way the core mechanism works is in each. So I played a 3-player game of it. In each round, we put 4 cards into each of 3 different bays, I guess. And then on your turn, you get to draft a die, and for the card drafting, you'll put it in one of those. And then the way you resolve that after everybody's draft their 4 dice is that the person who played the highest dice gets to draft the card they want first, but the cost of the card is equal to the dice value. So if you put a 1 in there, you get a cheap card if there are any remaining, but maybe not the one you want. Or if there's something you really want, you could take a 6, guarantee it, but pay 6 times as much as the person who put the 1. I mean, that's
Sounds
just
cool.
perfect mechanism for me. Just really cool trade off. Great, kind of risk taking, risk mitigation built into it. I really dug that aspect of it. I know Tyler's really excited to show me this one because it, like, as you deduce, it just seems like such a perfect game for me. I thought it was fun. For some reason, it like didn't have like that magic for me that I was looking for. Maybe because I had been playing board games for 9 straight hours before learning this one. It's like, so I don't want to like just devoid it from its context. Like, and Tyler said something similar. Like, he felt like kind of he wasn't really getting like the magic in the game that he's had in other times playing it. So possibly it was just because of where we were at the in the day when we got this one to the table. But I think one thing that I find is something that's coming up for me more often as a board game player is I don't like when lots of new information is like revealed throughout the game. Like, it was just kind of a bummer that we kind of had to like do a little bit of a rules teach in each of the 4 rounds as 12 new cards came out and kind of all worked differently. We had to like sit there and kind of like look at them and learn them. And that wouldn't be the case the second time, but it definitely just made the momentum of the game feel like it kind of like grinds to a halt. And that's just something I know about myself too. Like, in a lot of the kind of troops on a map space games that my group of friends really likes to play, like there's always like upgrade cards out that people are doing, and I just like feel in myself like I don't want to like have to go over to your side of the table and like read that and like learn about that and like see what the new cards are when I'm just like trying to like internalize a game system. So that's just something I've noticed about myself for a first play that kind of is probably took like the shine off it a little bit. But I still, despite that, thought it was really cool. Just elegant systems, a game I would totally be happy to play again, and think it's probably a game that I would like much more on a second play, not having to learn the cards again because they're simple once you know them. But yeah, that was my experience with Coimbra. It feels like a game that people really liked for a bit, and now you don't hear it talked about as much and kind of getting passed over. So I don't know if
Would you rather
that's
play Okay, Tyler comes up to you. You can play Grand Austria Hotel or Coimbra. Which are you picking
Grand Austria
right
Hotel.
now? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I love Grand
Interesting.
Austria Hotel though. So
What about Golem or Coimbra? Which you
I would
play more
rather play
for?
Coimbra, I think, than I liked it enough that I would rather play a second play of Coimbra than learning a Golem or a first rat.
Okay, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting and helpful. The dice drafting mechanism of like you pay what you have to pay more to go first is cool. That sounds like a good core
Yeah.
mechanism.
And interestingly, we played Artemis Project recently at a different game night, and that works almost the exact same mechanism with the dice, where it's worker placement with dice, and wherever you go, it kind of like resolves. And I
How
think it was
much
the
you
opposite. It
pay?
was like low to high, but you'd get more benefit from having a high dice if there was stuff left
Interesting.
to claim. That's a really cool system, just a really cool mechanism that is intuitive, simple, has like inherently really great trade-offs. So I love that mechanism, and both those games are showcased it well.
Well, I'm intrigued. But also, Jake, this next game you played is also a dice game, but this is a classic, more or less. Released in 2018, Lords of Vegas, from James Ernest, the guy behind Cheap Ass Games, and Mike Selinker. What do you think of Lords of Vegas? This is a game where you're like buying into casinos and like betting at each other's casinos. It's like zany, off the wall, right?
It's absolutely insane.
Okay.
Have you played Acquire?
No, but I want to.
Okay. So Acquire is this. So Lords of Vegas, I think for those who have played Acquire but not Lords of Vegas, it felt to me a lot like Acquire with dice. So Acquire is a very random game where on your turn you will be randomly dealt a lot on the board. Some of the lots are going to be really important and allow you to do a ton of interesting and fun stuff. Some of the lots, not so much. And Lords of Vegas does the same thing, but like heaps a ton of different mechanisms onto it as well. And as you pointed out, it's all about building up these massive casinos in Las Vegas. It was like let's see, how should I put this? Like it was a total blast to play. I had a really fun time engaging with the system, but it is not like a game that has like a really great, elegant decision space like I would normally point people to on this podcast. It felt closer in some ways to, and this is going to piss people off, Brendan, but I'm just going to say it. It felt closer in some ways to Monopoly than it does to like our modern board game hobby. And so because like everything you do in this game is dictated by either randomly getting a lot or dice rolls. So there's basically a mechanism is you can build a casino. So if you get dealt a lot, you can pay money to put a casino down on it. Where things start getting like really crazy is that if somebody has a lot next to your casino, they can remodel their casino. So there's like different colors of casinos. So they could say like, "Oh, I had this yellow casino next to your silver casino, and now mine's silver too, and now we all have this casino together. And because my yellow casino had a higher dice value in it than your casino, now I'm gonna be the boss of the casino and I get it all." But there's another action that like you can pay money equal to all the pips in the casino to reroll all the dice. And then whichever dice is the highest value at the end of that roll off, like now they're the boss of the casino and get all the rewards. So kind of what happened in our game was it devolved into a situation where there was like one huge casino that everybody had dice in, or almost everybody had dice in. So maybe it was like 10 segments big. So if you were the boss of that casino and that color gold gets drawn out of the deck, then you get 10 points, which is like a massive amount of points in the game.
Yeah.
So, I had like one in there. Jared had 3 in there or something. A bunch of other people had 2 or 1. And somebody would remodel it. And, somebody had it 1 dice in it is just all of a sudden the boss of the casino. And they get like 2 hits on it and just like kind of win the game pretty easily off that. We kept re-rolling it. Jared has like the best chance because he has the most dice in there. But for you still have to kind of get lucky to have the highest dice. So it felt like the most pivotal and exciting moments of the game came down to just pure chance in a way that's like unsatisfying to me as like somebody who's like a modern board game hobby enthusiast. But as somebody who's just like having a fun time with friends, like it was hilarious and fun. So I'm kind of like of two minds about it.
So a low agency blast.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. There's another mechanism I just have to talk about because it's just absolutely hilarious, which is on your turn, once per turn, you can go to somebody else's casino and gamble.
Yeah.
And you can just pay money and you roll dice. And I think the odds are like slightly in the casino's favor, but not tremendously so. Like maybe it's like, 55-45 or something like that. And if you win, they have to pay you. And if you lose, you have to pay them, whatever your bid was. But it's like good enough odds that like, I have like $19 and I really need 20 to do this thing. So I'm going to like go gamble for it. Like it's worth it to do that. But if you roll doubles, you get paid out double. And I rolled doubles gambling at the same person's casino on two, or not doubles, sorry, double ones or double sixes.
Okay.
Right. So and I
One
rolled
third chance. Yeah. Well,
no,
no,
like really
no.
small
Way
too.
less. Way less. One
Yeah,
third
really
times one third. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
No,
I
even less. Yeah.
it's
Sorry.
low.
Go
I mean,
on.
it's
Go
low
on.
odds.
Super low. Yeah.
But anyway, I rolled doubles at the same person's casino on two subsequent turns around the
Yeah. Yep.
table,
Yep.
which was just like absolutely hilarious. I asked the laughing table friends I was playing with to say one favorite play from the weekend, not counting Dune. And the two people that responded, Luke and William, both said this.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, like,
Wow.
and it's so funny to me, man. Like, people really say like challengers is like a no luck, is like they don't like challengers because it's just so lucky. And then we
Yeah.
like play this in the same day and they're like, that was awesome. Just like, but how? Like, don't you see? Like, there's no way that challengers has less agency than this game. Absolutely
Dice.
no way at all.
Dice have brain magic though, Jake. Our simple brains can't
Yeah.
break the fact that we love dice.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, it's fun, but it's just like one of these like it's like a classic game. I think just know what you're getting into if you want to play Lords of Vegas. Like having some beers with some buddies, rolling dice, gambling. Like you're just gambling. Like I like gambling. Gambling is fun. So doing that is like gonna be fun. But it's definitely scratching a very different itch than a lot of like these kind of like fun puzzles that we get to solve in other games.
Sure. Not a puzzle.
Yeah, right. That was my experience with it. I've only played it once.
Okay, cool.
I would play it again under, similar circumstances, like maybe
Yeah.
at a con, maybe at the end of the night, but not necessarily at a time when, like, if I wanted to play a board game and somebody's like, we're just playing Lords of Vegas, I'd be like, oh, that's kind of,
Interesting.
I wouldn't,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like if I invited you over for Yahtzee.
Right. Or yeah, it'd be like if somebody invited me over to like a game night and they're like, cool, man, pull up a chair. Texas Hold'em's the game. I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, that's cool. But like that's just not like exactly what I would have come over
I didn't know we were playing
for.
poker. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. What about if they invite you over to play this next game, which is, can I say it? Can I say it?
Yeah.
Okay. First release in 1979, re-release in 2019, designed by the designers of Cosmic Encounter, Bill Eberly, Jack Kittredge, and Peter Alaka. Jake played Dune.
Yeah. So this was our big game of the weekend, and this was the very start of day 2 for me. We all got together, we got our different factions, we went through the teach, and we played a full 6-player game of Dune. If you don't know what Dune is, it's a similar-ish to like a Twilight Imperium. It's like a giant sprawling war game that plays between 2 and 6 hours. So not quite as giant as Twilight Imperium, but you're doing a lot of the same things. You're getting troops, you're putting them out on the board, you're attacking other players, getting into combat, trying to hold important key points. And in Dune, it's really all about holding key points. To win the game of Dune, all you need to do is at the end of combat hold 3 of the 5 strongholds individually, or 4 if you're in an alliance with a partner. The other just amazing thing about Dune is that each faction has very, very different player powers. So, and these are not like mildly asymmetric. These are like extremely asymmetric. So I'll talk just very briefly about a couple of them. So mine was the Emperor. I got to play the Emperor. And in Dune, everybody's constantly cash strapped for spice. That's the resource that you're paying in all the game throughout the game for everything. And when you're the Emperor, you don't have to worry about that because when people buy cards with spice, which is a huge point of the game, instead of paying the bank, they pay the Emperor. The only person that has to pay the bank for cards is me. So I just always had tons of money. And while people are like, going around getting in conflict for spice drops at other parts of the board, I could just like completely ignore all that because I have all the money really I could ever need. So that was great. I loved it. It's interesting in that I feel like if I were to play Dune again, I'd want to try it with a different faction. It would just feel so different, not just being completely cash flush the whole time. Another power I wanted to talk about is the Atreides. So the cards that we're all buying, they have like the power of presence, or whatever. They're like have a little bit of mind reading power that they learn from the Bene Gesserits. So they get to everybody's when we're bidding on these cards, they're all face down. So you're just bidding for a card without knowing what it is. And the Atreides faction is the only faction that gets to look at them before bidding. And they're also the only faction that's allowed to use paper to make notes. So they can make a note and know what everybody has. And that's hugely important because the way conflict works is that you send troops and a leader, and then you can also send a weapon and a shield. And there's basically blade weapons or projectile weapons or something, and poison weapons. And then there's two types of shield, one that can block poison and one that can block the other type of weapon. So like the Atreides could just know what kind of shield that the other person has or what kind of weapon to like use the right type of thing.
For the whole game.
Yeah, for the whole game.
Holy smokes. Okay.
So, and the last faction I'll talk about their power is the Bene Gesserits. So they have a variety of powers that I won't get into, but the coolest one, which is truly just like, I've heard other people say this, but like just the audaciousness of the designers to put this in the game, which is that before the game begins, before the first round begins, the Bene Gesserit player gets to make a prophecy where they get to decide or choose one faction and one round. So they predict who's going to win the game and in what round. And it's a 10-round game. You can realistically win it, probably anywhere between 3 and 10. I mean, 3 might be on the super early end, but one of the players was saying in their previous game they won it in round 4. So 4 and 10, and you have to know the faction. And if you get it right, then after the game is over, you reveal your prophecy card, and instead of the player who won the game winning, the Bene Gesserit player wins instead, which has all kinds of implications in the game, right? Because they could theoretically be working towards that. They can also win regularly too, but they could be working towards that the whole time. So I kind of begrudgingly accepted the invitation to play this game. I tend to, at conventions, want to just play quicker games, just play a bunch of stuff, which we definitely did. But the group wanted to do like at least one big game. So we all voted and Dune came out on top. So I said, fine, I'll do it. Even though it's kind of like a bigger negotiation, troops on a map game, all stuff that I typically don't really enjoy. But I have to say, this was absolutely one of the highlights of the con for me. I had an absolutely awesome time playing Dune. And I think, part of that is, maybe just the scale of it. I think one of the things you often hear about like the kind of really conflict focused games is that they are like cinematic and tell great stories. But when I'm playing one like in the confines of a game night, I don't tend to get that as much, right? If it's like a 2-hour game. But when you're playing a game that just has more time to breathe, and there can be more of a game arc, more different things can happen, people can kind of like wax and wane and influence, and so that really worked for me. And we also had just a really fun and exciting conclusion of our game that made it like truly tell a great story. So what happened in our play was, interestingly, you can't just go into an alliance with somebody when you want to. You can only do that when the worm card shows up. And that creates like a nexus, and that's your opportunity to form an alliance with another player. So that we're kind of like waiting and waiting and waiting, and that didn't end up happening for us until the start of the 6th round of the game, so more than halfway through. And so prior to that, it really felt like the game was just kind of like jockeying for position, almost just to like become an eligible person to ally with, so that when this opportunity that we all know is coming comes, like if you're in a strong position holding strongholds, then perhaps you can just ally with somebody else who's already in a strong position holding strongholds and win it that round. So it came up. I'm the rich guy. I was in charge of one stronghold. Jared was like the belle of the ball. He was the Atreides. He had 2 strongholds and like a large force in each of them. So as soon as it popped up, I was like, Jared, come with me. I've got cash. I've got this one stronghold. You've got 2. We'll just like send our troops in the other one. Bing, bang, boom. We've got this. And he's like, I accept. And then there was like a lot of hemming and hawing around the table as the other people formed alliances. But I was thinking kind of like, I think we're in great shape. I definitely did oversell my strength to Jared. Like I made it seem like I just had endless money when I had like an okay amount of money, but not really enough to do everything that I was sort of saying I could do.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the other two people grouped up, and it was like the Harkonnen and the Fremen joined up, and then the Spacing Guild and the Bene Gesserit teamed up. And when we get into the conflict part of the phase, we realize because of just we couldn't actually, it was impossible for us to win that turn because there were already like other factions fighting in strongholds, so we had to like at least wait one more round to make our big move. So we just had to hold our advantage and then win on the next round. The Bene Gesserit and Space Guild player were the only people that had a chance of winning, but they had to win like four. They were inside four strongholds, but weak in all of them, and they had to win four unlikely combat wins in a row to win the game. And they win the first one, win the second one, win the third one against all odds, and it comes to me and the Space Guild player, and I, put all my resource in it. But it becomes apparent to me that they had a lot more strength than I anticipated, and I wasn't going to be able to win. So
They
against all
won?
odds, they pulled out this like crazy victory
Wow.
and are celebrating. And Tyler, the Bene Gesserit player, is like, "Oh, you might want to look at the prophecy cards." And he flips them over. Space Guild in the 6th round. So instead of a shared alliance victory, he got the solo win.
Wow.
It was absolutely
When he was
insane.
one of the players that allied with the
So
player
he
who made that
allied
happen.
with the
Wow.
person
And made it work. Oh my
knowing
god.
that if they won that round, which he definitely sold the other player on, like he's like, we have to make our move now.
Wow. So you basically had the dream play of Dune in your first play.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, it was in, we had like a lunch break in the middle of it. And, Tyler, the Bene Gesserit players in the bathroom, I was like joking with the Space Guild person. I was like, I would never ally with the Bene Gesserits because like they're the only person you can't know what their true motives are.
Motivations are.
But what I was
Yeah.
saying is like, for all like they could just step out of the stronghold and let somebody else walk into a victory
Right.
to like, and I was like, or like, he could even, pick you and, and then get a solo victory. And he was like, Tyler doesn't seem like that kind of person. I don't know him real well, but he doesn't seem that. And Jared's like, oh no, Tyler can be pretty ruthless. That was like just mere moments before Tyler just like absolutely took him out behind the woodshed.
Mop the table.
Dude, yeah.
Wow.
So that was crazy. So that was Dune, like an unforgettable experience. And, against all odds, one that I think I would love to play again at some point.
The fact that you of all people are like Dune was incredible. I want to play it again. Just I'm a huge fan of Cosmic. I love these more zanier type of negotiation games with strong asymmetric powers. And the fact that of the two of us, you played this game and had an incredible time and want to play it again makes me think it might be a game that I just can't afford to not play
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
life. Like up until now, it's sort of like I know I would love this game, but I don't know that I have to experience it. And I'm sort of like, well, maybe I have to experience this. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was great. So that was Dune. All right, Brendan, we're gonna have to fly, man.
Speed run. Okay.
We'll speed run the rest of these because that was the really big one. So after Dune, I got the opportunity to play some trick taking games with William, Tyler, and Luke. William brought
Nice.
out Tricky Time Crisis, a trick taking game that I really was eager to get to the table because I've heard good things about it. Like all these other trick takers in this trick taking renaissance that we're in now, it's like a normal trick taking game with like one clever riff. And in this case, the clever riff is that there are 4 suits, 3 are hero cards, and 1 is a supervillain card. So and you have to play off suit. So one person has to play a supervillain, and they are the villain for that round. And the way the trick is won is either the villain wins it or the heroes win it if their combined card values are greater or equal than the villain's strength. And based on who wins it and who played the highest card, if the heroes win, each person gets to like take a card out of the trick. And then that's how you're getting points. You're like trying to, I think at the end of the round, you score your highest card. If you have one card, you score the value of that card. And if you have multiples of it, of a suit of cards, you just get 2 for per card. So a lot of strategy is like around trying to make sure you only end up with one villain card because they could be like 26 value, right? So if you have 26, but then you get a second villain, now that 26 just turned into a 4.
Right.
So that's Tricky Time Crisis. Awesome. I loved it. I would love to play more of it. Definitely up there with some of my favorite trick takers I've played. Then we tried Lunar, a new trick taking game. Or maybe it's not new. I think it came out in like a recent, maybe like a Kickstarter or something from All Play, where they put like 4 trick taking games out. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's one of those. The hook for this one is that there are numbered cards and colored cards, and they're in their own decks of cards. You get basically dealt,
Whoa.
6 numbers and 6 suits. And it's a partnership game where, the lead player will play either a number. So there's a lead player on each team, and they'll play either a number or a suit. And then the other person has to like complete the set. So if I'm your partner and I play a 6, then you have to play a suit. And you're trying, it's basically that with a fox in the forest scoring mechanism where you're trying to like win just the right number of tricks without winning too many.
Interesting. That sounds cool.
It was cool too. It felt like I didn't like it quite as much just because it seemed like a little bit more fiddly than some of the other ones. Like I just didn't like that I had to have like 2 different hands of cards with 2 different card backs on it. It just felt like a little less elegant than some of the other trick takers I played recently. But it was very clever and cool, and I still totally enjoyed my play.
And that was
So
Lunar from Masato Usagi, who's the designer of Durian and Welcome to the Dungeon.
yep.
Okay, cool.
Next up, we played Resistance, the classic social deduction game. I'd been talking on this podcast about wanting to get it to the table more, and we had 2 great plays of this. One of the exciting things to note about it is that we played without any special powers or anything, just classic Resistance, our way, Brendan, the way we like to play, that apparently
Yes.
nobody else did.
In the
So
whole
everyone
world.
had played everyone had played Avalon before, but nobody had played Resistant without any special powers. And it turned out that we had just an awesome time with it regardless. And I think kind of the takeaway from people we played with was that it felt almost the same as Avalon with the special powers. And I think that they were kind of impressed by how fun the game is, even without those like gamification elements to it.
Yeah.
Even if maybe at the end of the day they would prefer Avalon slightly. I thought it was a total blast, and we had a great time with it.
Was that play enough that you feel like you could talk about it on the show, or do you feel like you need one more?
Yeah, no, I'm ready. I'm ready, dude.
Okay.
I think we
so
should
like
cover
maybe the
cover
next
it.
month. Let's do it.
Yeah, so let's leave
Okay.
that there, and more Resistance coverage coming soon on this podcast.
Okay, Jake, the next game you covered, I'd never heard of. It's called Doodle Dash. It came out in 2021, and I looked it up, and it was designed by 5 people, 2 of whom are Eilif and Asmund Svensson, who I know because they're designers of Trails of Tucana and Capital Lux, which are games that I really enjoy. So what is this wild Scandinavian game you played?
This game, it rules. It's a
Okay,
super
sick.
fun
Great.
party game. It's like Pictionary or whatever, right? As the core hook, but like all good drawing games, it makes it so that it's not just about who can draw the best. So in this one, you have a dry erase board and a marker. Somebody will hold up a card, just one style, and say a number on it, and that will tell you a thing to draw. So perhaps a dragon or a stapler. Then in the middle, then they'll say 3, 2, 1, go, and close their eyes. And everybody draws that thing as fast as they can. The first person to finish grabs like a wooden thing in the middle of the board or in the middle of the table. You grab that. The second person to finish drawing grabs a dice that has 2 stop signs on 2 of the faces and rolls until they get 2 stops. Then everybody has to finish their drawings. Then the guesser can open their eyes and they see just the person who finished first drawing, and they take a guess. If they get it right, then they get a point, and the person who did the drawing gets a point. If they don't get it right, then they get to see the drawing of the person who finished second. If they can guess it then only the guesser and the person who drew the second drawing get a point. If they still can't get it, then they get to look at all the drawings together. And if they guess it right at that point, then everybody but the first and second to finish get a point. So it's basically like if you're finished first, you have the first chance at getting a point, but also the least time to do the drawing. So it's just like absolutely a riot. Just every single, it's just such a good bit because every single time the first person flips over their board to, and as a drawer, that like you're drawing a coat, and then they flip over this drawing of a coat that they did in like 2.5 seconds, and it's just like the worst drawing you've ever seen in your entire life, and just like everybody's howling in laughter. And that's pretty much the game. Like
That sounds sweet.
it was so fun, dude. It was definitely, definitely the time throughout the whole weekend I was laughing the hardest, and maybe just like having just like purely like having fun. This game was it.
So if you want
Totally
a
a
party
highlight.
game, pick up Doodle Dash and Fun Facts.
Yeah, fun facts is like more. It's a little different. Like I feel like maybe not every single person would get as into Doodle Dash just because it's like has a tiny bit of like dexterity game. Like you have to be like so fast. Like I could see that being like frustrating and stressful to people. Where I think fun facts is like for everyone. But like when Doodle Dash hits, like it did for us, it's gonna hit like way harder.
Nice.
So great. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, well, going from Doodle Dash to Torres, 1999 Spiel des Jahres abstract winner from Kramer and Kiesling. This is about as far of a game shift as we can get. How was your like live play with Torres?
It was interesting having played Torres so much for the podcast. This was my second time, I think, playing it. Either second or third time playing it on the table. Jared's first time, and then I also roped in Bridget and Luke, and it was fun. I mean, I love this game. I think the design is absolutely genius. Still, it suffered a little bit for me in this play, and just like that, I've played it so much and playing against people who haven't played it all. I kind of just like I did really well, and it's like, well, yeah, because it's that type of like basically pure no luck game. Whoever's played it the most is best at it's pretty much gonna win. So that showed up as a little bit of a blemish for me. But it seemed like everybody had fun. I totally had a blast with it. If you want more Torres, probably my third favorite Kramer and Kiesling game behind El Grande and Renature. We did a whole podcast on it, so you can seek it out there.
Episode 139. Awesome.
All right. After that, this was the last game of Saturday night was Moon, the new game from Sinister Fish by Håkon Gardiner. And it is kind of a little bit hot lately because the Shut Up and Sit Down put out a glowing video review of it. This was my second play of Moon. Have you heard about Moon, Brendan?
Only so much as you told me about the wild objectives where you're offered like there's like open objectives that are like there's 12 of them on the table or something that you're all going for.
Yeah. So I guess I talked about that on this podcast. So that's definitely a little bit of a drawback from this game, similar to like Coimbra, where you like teach all the rules and you're like, okay, let's play. It's like, okay, great. Just after we look at these 12 cards and kind of try to internalize all of them, which isn't a horrible deal breaker. Moon is a really interesting game. It has some great novel twists on the drafting genre. I think the hook that really gets me is that it's a classic drafting game where you have a hand of cards on each turn. You'll take one of those cards out, use it, pass the rest. But traveling along with those hands of cards is a mission card. So that card just goes with the hand, but you can't ever draft it. Instead, it gives you a special ability or action that you can take only while you have that hand. So it adds a little bit like of extra character to the actual hands themselves that are getting passed around the table. You can kind of start thinking ahead a little bit more in addition to like, oh, I hope that card comes back to me. It's like, oh, when this thing that gives me an extra resource definitely does come to me in 2 turns, I'll be able to use that in this way. So that's really interesting and fun. The game itself is pretty simple. You're trying to, it's a classic Tableau engine building type of game where you're building up production, scoring for majorities. It's not really breaking any new ground there, but it definitely, I think, does what it sets out to do effectively. I did find that my two plays this game so far have both dragged just like a little bit long. And I think that's because it's a drafting mechanism, and I'm conditioned to think drafting games should be fast because they often are used with simultaneous play. And in this case, the game is not simultaneous. You take a card, do your action, then the next person does their action, and so on and so forth, and then you all pass cards. And
Interesting.
and that's just like a true double-edged sword because it does slow the game down significantly, but it also enables more interaction between hands of cards. And also, like, you get to see all the cool stuff that other people are doing with their tableaus. So it's a double-edged sword. I think it's a good game. I'm not sure if I love it. It's I think Sinister Fish is a great publisher that does really interesting stuff that I'll continue to be intrigued by their releases. I think I've only played Villagers and this one, and both of them feel like they're taking something like so familiar and twisting it in a really interesting way. But I think in both cases, maybe I find them like a little bit more like interesting than like super
Fun.
fun. Yeah. But
Interesting.
I
And
want
this is
I
an
own
hour?
this one. Yeah. I'm sorry.
It takes about an hour to play Moon?
I
Longer.
think my 2 player, so we played this at 3. I think probably about an hour, maybe like hour 15. My 4 player game was like really
Long.
long. It was like 2 hours
Interesting.
or something.
Okay.
But that was a learning game for everyone. So I think that was an outlier for sure.
Interesting. I mean, I'm intrigued by this game. I like Villagers. I don't love it. This seems like the sort of game I'd be, like you said, I want to learn more about it, but I don't know that I'm like dying to play.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is fair. I own it now. It was a Christmas gift, so I think I definitely will give it another couple of plays. I think it might just be a best at 2 game at the end of the day, which is totally fine. So I'm definitely going to try it at 2, and I'll report back after
Cool.
I do.
Okay, so this next game, we're going from Moon to Sun. This is Soul, Last Days of a Star, 2017. This game has a little bit of like board game aficionado cachet as a game that like kind of flew under the radar, but then people who love it seem to really love it. What
Yeah,
did
and I
you
think
think of
it
this
had a
game?
second printing, and that Kickstarter is like just now delivering. So
Okay, so it's getting another
that's
wave too.
yeah, so I think that we're riding that now, and I think Jared was the one who backed it in our play group, and so we played his copy. I think we should kind of skip this one for now. I had fun with it. I think the game is really clever. We got some rules, like just a little bit twisted, in a way that kind of it was this type of thing where we like realized we were doing something really broken with kind of like the way we were converting resources about halfway into the play, but then by that point, like it's all about like setting up infrastructure. So we had set up infrastructure, or at least I had, in a way to sort of like take advantage of this thing. And then we got like switched back. It's like, okay, well, I would have done everything differently from the first turn. So it's just like it was like a big, which is fine. It's like a learning game. I think I really dig this game. It feels like a space game that's actually just purely a Euro game, at least in the base rules. Maybe there's like more, direct conflict and stuff in some of the advanced modules. But I think I dig it, but I just can't say for sure right now. So I better just reserve judgment until I get a chance to play it again.
Okay, so we might revisit this one in the podcast. The next one is a Knizia game. You're only one of the show, Jake. What's going
Yeah,
on?
it was the last one we played. So we had to sneak one in there. And I'm saying we're orienting this before the last game. We'll talk about Smartphone Inc. after this as the final game we'll cover on this podcast. But after my play of Smartphone Inc., I was feeling some kind of way, and I was going to leave right after that. And I decided, you know what? Let's end on a good note and pull out Summer Treasures, aka Circus Flohcati, a 1998 Reiner Knizia game instead. That will be sure to put a smile on my face. I had played this one once before. It's a very simple and clever deck of cards, with a slight, I guess not slight, just a push your luck mechanism where on your turn you'll draw cards off a shared deck. And if you draw a card that matches the suit of another card, you bust and have to pass your turn. You can stop at any point and just take any card to your hand. You are trying to collect 3 of the same number. If you do, you can put them down to score 10 points. And at the end of the game, you score the face value of every suit of card in your hand, whatever you have the highest of. So you're both trying to go, same, right? So there's a good return on investment if you can get 3 zeros, because that was going to be worth 0 to you and now they're worth 10, but you probably wouldn't lay down 3 sevens because that would be like a net loss of 11 points, right? You're getting 10
Right.
instead of the full 21. So has some, for basically no rules overhead at all, some really interesting decisions. A clever little game by Reiner Knizia, who's kind of good at that.
Jake, if there's a Star Wars 2002 Attack of the Clone Wars retheme of this game, should I buy it?
Wait, is there?
Yeah, I'm looking at it on eBay. I think I want to buy it.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
should.
worth checking out. I actually, Kinesia games can be like really hit or
Okay.
miss for me. And it's funny, like I was talking about a recent game I played called Photograph recently, and somebody was mentioned in our Discord. I can't remember who, or I would name check them, that for them, like Photograph is like more like clever than it is fun.
Mm.
And I think, and that really stuck with me. And I think that this game might kind of fall in that. I've played it twice, and it's just so clever that like I'm like delighted by it. I'm not sure that like what you're doing in the game is really like all that fun, but like just because of who I am, like I'm like delighted by like clever mechanisms. So just to like see, how Reiner Knizia has done an elegant push your luck set collection game with a deck of cards. I mean, I guess it depends on the price point. I would not pay $30 for it, but I would gladly pay 12.
Well, just bought it. Okay, Jake, that's really exciting. Circus Flohcati from 1998, and a clever game. But our final game, we're ending with like the big Euro game, a big Euro game with a novel action selection mechanism where you have to like arrange cards with symbols to create a cool smartphone that everyone in the market wants to buy across the whole globe, or maybe an affordable smartphone that you're getting the best share of the market possible. This is like a thematic economic Euro-ish game. Smartphone Inc. What do you think?
Yeah, it's like a purely economic game. I think, is that even a Euro game? It almost feels like a different
Interesting.
classification in
Okay.
some ways. But yeah, it is. I've been seeing Smartphone Inc. a lot on kind of people's like best board games of all time list. I think Dice Tower recently did their top 100 games across all their reviewers, and Smartphone is a game that came up a lot. So when I saw it in Tyler's bag, I thought, hey, maybe I should check out this game. I think the theme of it, of like building smartphones and like running a smartphone technology company, is just absolutely not exciting at all to me. But like as soon as we got into the teach and I started learning about like the mechanisms of the game, like the turn off of the theme was like, I just didn't care about that at all, because I was just so excited about the clever mechanisms of building my own little phone but behind my player board, and then just the way the game just kind of like plays out in front of you. It's so much easier to learn and to play than I was expecting, by a factor of like 10.
Hmm.
You basically make your phone behind your board, and then the rest of the game kind of just like automatically plays out. You have some choices in there, but then it's just like opera, like you're just kind of like running through each phase real quickly. So we learned the game, did the first round of the game. It took like 10 minutes or less, and then it's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, that's round one. We've got 4 rounds left, and that's it. I'm like, what? That's it? It's going to be so quick, and it slows down a little bit, as games tend to do as you get towards the end. And now it's like, okay, well, now it really matters where I'm going with my phone. But even still, the whole play was relatively quick for like a pretty. It feels like a quick game, and for the amount of like gameplay you get out of it being really high. So it just felt like a good time value proposition from that front. And then, yeah, basically it delivers on exactly what you would expect. You want to try and take over different markets. You're basically jockeying for the ability to sell phones all over the world.
Hmm.
So in different markets, in countries, they want different things. So there are like different technologies you can invest in. So in gaining more technology basically gives you more ability to sell in different places. Also having, there's also like different places will pay different values for phones. So like if you take like the United States, they basically will buy a phone that has every different type of technology, and at like each different cost point in the game. So they'll just buy like a lot of phones, whereas other places they just
Need
have like
specific
less.
things.
demand overall. So
Okay.
yeah. So anyway, you want to like both. It's incentive. I'm doing a really bad job explaining this, but the game is incentivizing you to both like specialize in different markets because you can like build more offices in different markets, or even you can potentially build all the offices in a market, meaning no other player has any ability to sell there. You've like
Hmm.
got a monopoly
Cornered the
there.
market. Yeah.
Right. And if you have a monopoly in a market, then you could charge a lot. You could charge the maximum amount for a phone there.
Hmm.
Just like, so mimicking kind of like real economics in a really satisfying way. You also are like trying to get right the cost of the value of your phone and how many you're producing. So
Hmm.
you can produce a lot of phones, but if you don't have the ability to sell them because you're not in enough markets, or because somebody else is flooding the markets with super cheap phones, then you've got all these phones that just you'll have to discard at the end of the round. So that's kind of what you're weighing with the key decisions, where you're trying to build your influence, how you're trying to market your phone based on what technology it has and what you're setting the price point at. And all
Sounds
those
really cool.
really cool, really intuitive. All the different levers you can pull are fun, and you can also like it's not like you're building a tableau in front of you. So I think that was another thing I was really impressed by is how like fluid, in one round you
Mm.
could have the most expensive phone, and then in the
Mm.
next round, because you're just like doing this like kind of spatial reasoning puzzle with cardboard pieces behind your player board, the next round you could have the cheapest phones
Interesting. That's
and
cool.
pivot back and forth. So I got absolutely smacked in this game. I think I just got like boxed out everywhere, and I was kind of floundering as I was like trying to do what I normally do in Euro games, which is like take kind of like a sensible middle path. Like I won't have the most expensive phones, but I won't have the cheapest ones. I'll just kind of like be right in the middle, and I'll have like some technology, but not all of them. And then like dabbling in all the areas of the game was a bad idea because I was just getting beat in every aspect by somebody and didn't really have an advantage anywhere. So I think I only was able to sell like 2 phones in the last 2 rounds of the game, which is horrifically bad performance. So that was a little bit frustrating, or it was a lot frustrating. I was extremely frustrated, I should be honest. But I still walked away excited about the play and excited about the game overall.
Is a lot of the decision space of this game then, Jake, reading the board and where your opponents have invested in markets and trying to speculate on the type of phone you think they'll bring to market, and then building a phone to counteract that based on the markets that you're in / might be in? Is that kind of
Yeah,
the crux of the decision
that
space? Okay.
that 100% is like that's like the idealized version of the
Of the
decision
Okay.
space. The thing that frustrated me, and it like frustrates me about these types of games in general, is kind of the same thing that I ran into with Chicago Express actually, which is like you can get in a point in this game where you're just like absolutely dominated by another
Yeah.
player, and then it's kind of like, what do you do then? Are you just trying to like get the most points? Should you like try and do everything you can to harm that person? Or should you be like trying to take like a moonshot for like the 1 in 1,000 chance that like just maybe you could like squeak out a win or something? And so like I in the last round of the game, basically I was in like fourth out of 5 places, or I can't remember, but basically I was way back, and so was another player, and like they kind of undercut me by pricing their phones, low
And it's like, "Oh,
to
great, we're
take
playing for
over my
4th."
market, but then they didn't really, they like
Yeah.
by doing that they had zero chance of making like enough money to like close the gap in a meaningful way. So it was sort of like I felt like, oh, like you shouldn't have done that, and they're like, well, I was just trying to get as much money as as much points as like I could in the game. It's like, well, of course that's like totally fair too. That's 100% fair. Like that's completely makes sense. But it was just in the moment I was just kind of like, well, that's frustrating for me because like I was kind of doing the other thing where I was like, okay, I wanted to, I felt like I had to price my phones high because I was behind. So like the only way I could potentially make up the gap was that.
Was going for the win. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
Shooting the
so
moon,
it's
yeah.
like, should it be just like a race for the bottom at the end between the fourth and fifth place players? Like, I don't know.
It sounds like despite these issues, you definitely played again.
Yeah, I would. I mean, it was a really interesting play, and I liked how like simple and streamlined it was. Made me fearful for Food Chain Magnate because I think I'm like, I need to give it a try. I could be wrong, but at the end of the day, I wonder if like this might be more up my alley than that, just for like how quick it is to like onboard and play. Because I was like, if that was if I was in the position I was at, the hour mark for a 2.5 hour game, then I'd probably be feeling a lot worse than if it was just like, okay, well, I got killed, but at least it's over.
Yeah, totally.
So that's it, Brendan. Holy cow. Whew.
19 games in one weekend, Jake. I feel like you had some really interesting plays.
Yeah, I mean, it was
novel
awesome.
mechanisms, some like exciting, just fun stuff like Lords of Vegas,
It
an amazing play of Dune. It sounds like an incredible weekend.
it really was. Like, it's hard. Bridget was asking me, it's like, what was your like highlight of it? And it's so hard. I mean, Dune was the highlight, but like basically outside of that, like it's hard for me to say, this was my favorite player. This was my couple of favorite plays because I actually enjoyed every single thing I played. Like there just wasn't a single dud all weekend.
Wow.
I was frustrated sometimes, there maybe like there are certain aspects of like Lords of Vegas or whatever that was just kind of like, okay, this is just silly. Like,
Yeah.
but like I was having a blast, and I mean a big part of that was the company. So I just want to thank Tyler, Luke, Keenan, Jared, William, and Bridget for gaming and for the awesome weekend. I can't wait for the next one.
Well, I'm jealous, and I'm glad you played so many awesome games, Jake. I did buy the Clone Wars retheme of Circus Flohcati officially, so I'll let you know what
so
I
you
think.
bought two.
And Doodle Dash sounded amazing. We're going to cover the Resistance. I feel like this is going to kick off like follow-up episodes. I mean, fun facts I feel like I need. I mean, if it's the end of the first Repos production trilogy of party games that's amazing, need it.
It's great.
I mean, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, any closing thoughts, Jake? Or
I just want to say, if you listen to this whole episode, holy cow, you are a champion.
Yeah.
I feel like I just have been talking so much. Brendan, I want to thank you for giving me the space to just talk. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Well,
Join our
awesome.
Design Space Jam.
Yes. And you can find more about that on decisionspacepodcast.com/decisionsspacejam, JAM. And then if you want to play games with us that we're going to cover on the show soon, you should definitely play Taverns of Tiefenthal. You should definitely play The Resistance, it sounds like. Ticket to Ride. Food Chain Magnate at some point in 2024. And then from there, thank you to Hembry for our intro and outro song, Reach Out. And thank you to Geekway for supplying us with this amazing episode. And Jake for playing so many good games.
Bye, y'all.
Take care.